Thank you for joining us. All right. Oh, goodness. Always so fun. You guys, welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, studio director. And if you think about it, time travel is the ultimate experience. It's the most immersive and interactive attraction ever imagined. And how cool would it be to be and look 22 again? I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know. But here in the Zeitgeist Creative Studio in Pasadena, California, time is always of the essence. This is where themed entertainment industry vets Ryan Harmon and Joe Lancicero study the past and spend the present envisioning the future of UXIRL, user experiences in real life. The Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we invite one incredibly talented and accomplished colleague along for a ride on our time machine. We journey through that person's career, unraveling the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. And because we're live, you're welcome to type in any questions into our chat box to me during the ride. And if there's time, our passenger will be happy to answer them. So, climbing aboard our time machine today is a gentleman who is 82 years young and will always tell you that he feels practically perfect. Gordon Hoops became a Disney Imagineer over half a century ago and was in the room when the concept of Epcot Center that we all know and love quite literally came together. As an architectural planner, Gordon was intimately involved in beloved projects like World Showcase, Spaceship Earth, Splash Mountain at Tokyo Disneyland, and so many more. And believe me, he's got unforgettable stories about all of them. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer, Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Joe Lancicero, along with the timeless former Disney Imagineer, Gordon Hoops.
Oh. Wait, Ryan, where did we just get back from?
1991, wasn't that amazing?
Well, we were in Seattle.
We saw Nirvana's first concert where they debuted Smells Like Teen Spirit. My God.
Totally incredible.
Dave is amazing.
Wait.
What happened? Uh-oh.
Are we muted? Okay, now we're good.
Oh, good. Sorry.
So, Ryan, we just got back from Seattle where we saw the first Nirvana concert. Those guys were incredible. Sad to see Kurt Cobain,
I know,
but amazing
cool
to see
that?
Dave Grohl.
I know. What a great guy he's going to turn out to be when he starts playing guitar and singing.
No. He should have never left the drums.
Really?
The guy was a monster on the
He
drums.
comes up with so many great licks.
What he does behind the kid is amazing.
Okay.
Let's just agree to disagree.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree.
Anyway, thank you all for coming on our time machine today.
Yes.
Before we get going, I just want to give a personal tribute to Gordon Hoops. I was fortunate enough. I was fortunate enough when I first made the transition from animation over to Imagineering. Early in my career, one of the first people I got to work with was Gordon Hoops,
Yeah.
and Gordon really shaped the way I thought about theme park design, because I really didn't know theme park design. I was so fortunate to get to work with someone like Gordon. And Gordon brought so much to what he did. He studied architecture, he studied planning, and just had this big thinking approach to whatever he did, which was a great lesson for somebody coming, cold into, this new industry and having to look at, what is theme park design about? And thank you, Gordon, for teaching me to take the high road, look at the big picture, and then design from there,
Yeah. Well, it was similar for me because I started working upstairs, 1401 set design area. Gordon was there along with all these other amazing guys. I was 20 years old, and Gordon just has such a passion for what he does, and just a way of explaining it in a very simple, way for someone like me at the time to just understand that's just the way it's done. I mean, that's the right way. And Gordon, I thank you as well for being kind to this long-haired, annoying kid back in 1987. And we're excited
No
to have you
idea
on a time machine.
But you're welcome. I enjoyed the experience with working with both you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's just all the truth. So let's set the time machine.
Yeah, Gordon, we know you have so many places to go, so many stories. Today, we're just going to really cover your career up to maybe the early 80s, and we'll have to take you on a ride for, another time. But today, let's set the machine for how about 1952. And I think we are here in Los Angeles. And Gordon, you're like 14. What are you doing there with the Sunday newspaper in your living room floor?
Well, I had made a habit of on the Sunday newspaper, the Los Angeles Examiner is what was then the daily paper. And they had on the Sunday issue, they had plans of various houses that developers were building around Southern California. And
we'll have to go back in time and buy a few of those.
Yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
I would study those plans and see if I couldn't make improvements just for fun. And so I started to study the illustrations of the houses and make those changes in the illustrations as well. And that developed, I guess, a hand in drawing.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, and I continued that, and that led to a job at a drafting service, doing the same thing for houses, and probably several of them, many of them are probably built throughout Southern California. I have no idea because we just sold the plans, and a person could do with what they wanted to do.
Yeah. So wasn't this also around the time where you entered the Ford Motor Company architecture contest?
Yes, I was in high school at the time, and that was a contest that was sponsored by the Ford Motor Company. It was a worldwide competition, and you submitted designs, and they had several different categories. I submitted my designs in architecture.
Okay.
And I got a couple of awards early in high school, and then my senior year, I won the first prize.
Wow.
Worldwide.
Wow. So Gordon, it's now 1956, the year I was born.
Right.
And it's your day of graduation.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, after graduation, in my graduating suit,
that same day.
I went out to a architectural firm in Beverly Hills called Pereira and Luckman. They were the premier firm in Southern California, maybe even California, and they would build many of the greater projects around. The LA airport was one of theirs.
Wow.
The Union Oil building in downtown, the trapezoid building in San Francisco is Pereira's.
And the Forum, right? The fabulous Forum.
The Forum, yes, correct.
Yeah.
In fact, while I was there, I cited the forum.
Wow.
Ah,
They needed to start construction because they were going to have a new code, and they wanted to get the construction of the building in with the old code. And so they said, okay, you have to figure out where to put the building. And where you see it now is where I directed.
Wow.
wow.
That's amazing.
Wow. You know, just listening to you talk about all those buildings and how varied all the architectural styles were, I couldn't help but think, you know, how that must have influenced you and affected your future work. You know, not looking at, you know, one style as the way to do something. I mean, how great to have so early in your career to have been, you know, exposed to all that different
Yeah.
styling of architecture, which was great about Southern California.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, you know,
Yeah.
it was like a giant. Actually, all of Southern California was like a giant movie lot.
Right.
It really was when you
Yeah.
think about all the crazy buildings, you know, all the House of Tudor style, you know, Spanish, you know, Mediterranean.
Right.
It really was, you know, this interesting mix of things, you know,
Right.
and such free thinking that allowed that at
Yeah.
the time too.
Yeah. Wow. So let's go forward about 9 or 10 years, and you're at a company, I think, Hutchinson.
Hutchison, yeah, Hutchison and Associates. I was one of the associates.
Oh, okay. What are you doing
Yeah.
here?
Well, I did a lot of different projects. Really had an opportunity to stretch my variation in styles. One of those buildings was the Tam O'Shanter restaurant in the Los Feliz area.
Wow.
And it had been there for many years. I think it was actually initially built in the early 20s.
Right.
And it was one of Walt Disney's hangouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
This
ate
tape is
lunch
still
there
there,
Yeah.
frequently, and the studio that he was working in then was just up the street. And so it was convenient for him, and they liked it, those artists that were working then at Disney.
Yep.
So that was kind of my very first dabbling in anything Disney.
Ah,
Interesting.
okay.
I tried to keep the nature of the restaurant, which was very old English, probably dating the building, not the building itself, but the style in the 1600s.
Wow.
And I wanted to keep that same style.
Right.
And it was built right up to the street, which made it a little difficult, but I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
So did that kind of prepare you for the next stop on our time machine here is 1968, and we're at the 20th Century Fox lot.
And I'm
What's
one.
happening there?
Yep.
Well, yes, I went to work at 20th Century Fox as a set designer, and did the Lost in Space show, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, shows that were all directed by Irwin Allen. He was the producer on all those shows.
Okay.
And they were all kind of futuristic. And I developed a style, so to speak, that was based in futuristic design.
Wow.
And not realizing it at the time, but that segued into my work at Disney.
So you worked on Hello Dolly, right? Any other movies?
Yes, I worked on Hello Dolly, a minor part of it because it was a very large show, many sets, and they took just about everybody who could hold the right end of a pencil to work on that show. But
Okay.
I did a little.
Yeah.
And I did some other shows also.
Fantastic Voyage, right?
Fantastic Voyage was interesting. Yeah, I
those
did
of you who don't
the
remember that-
Eye.
Yeah,
They
what's
were
that?
operating on the Eye. That's my set.
Ah,
Cool.
wow. That's awesome.
Wow.
Right. So a year later, here we are, and it sounds like you had a meeting with Roy O. Disney and the great landscape guru Bill Evans. What was that about? How'd you get that?
Well, the principal show I was working on then was Lost in Space, where
Okay.
I loved that show, and but I had been informed that it was the last season, so I started looking around, or I would accept looking around for another show to go to, and I got a call to come over to Disney and meet with some folks there. When I got there, it was Roy Disney. Walt had already died. So his brother now was leading the company. I went upstairs to the second floor of the building there on Flower Street in Glendale, and I met with Roy and
Bill Evans?
Bill Evans, yes, and was sort of interviewed. And so they said, well, we're not going to be able to hire you right now, but maybe after the first of the year. And this was late in the year, December probably.
Yeah.
So along came February or March, I think it was, and I got a call and come on over and start to work. And that was my beginnings of my career at Walt Disney Imagineering.
Wow.
Or then it was called WED, which is Walt's initials, Walt Elias Disney, WED.
Wow.
Wow.
So it was 1970 when you started. The only park Disney had was Disneyland here in Anaheim. Walt had been gone 3 years, almost 4 years. So what were you working on?
Well, we had already started, the company had already started working on designs for Florida. They had these 43,000 acres down there, and there had been some early attempts at coming up with ideas on how to use it. The only thing that they were sure of was the theme park. And it was going to be similar, not the same as, similar to Disneyland.
Okay.
And that work had already started being bulldozed in the property.
Wow.
The idea was that they were going to build a lake, and then you can't build below the surface of the ground in Florida, or that part of Florida anyhow,
Right.
because you hit the water table, and you have to build any basement like a ship. So it has to be not only watertight, but it has to also be held underground. So,
Wow.
or it'll float. And so they don't build the basement underground. They build it on the top of the ground, and then they take a bunch of dirt and pile around the perimeter of that basement, and to make it look like it was on the top. And then you build whatever you want on top of the basement, and then it looks like it's built on top of the ground with all the.
You're talking about the utilidor, right? The underground employee area in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, it's just a big basement.
Right, but how did that come about after they built Disneyland 15 years prior? At that point, did they say, it would be really helpful as if there were underground backstage areas? Is that kind of?
Yeah, they didn't want to see people in the wrong costumes walking through another land to get to an exit.
Right.
They wanted to keep the feeling of a land very, very carefully contained.
Right.
And that's what led to the basement. It was a very, very expensive and very, very good. It worked out very well.
But I feel like we've lost that art of caring so much about the guest experience that it's worth spending the money,
That money
to do something like that.
yeah.
I mean, that's never
Yeah,
happened
it's
again.
not-
But
it also speaks volumes to the people in charge and,
Right.
and their deep understanding of putting on a show for the guests.
Exactly.
And making sure that every aspect of it was considered.
Right. Yeah.
So Gordon, what was the first thing you got to design for this new Magic Kingdom park down
Yeah.
in Florida?
Well, in as much as I had been at 20th Century Fox Studios working on futuristic things, um, uh, Tomorrowland at Walt Disney World was not part of the initial consideration of for building that.
Wow.
Wow.
They wanted to spend the money on some of the more uh, other lands and not do Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland was going to be in the future.
Wow.
But-
Literally. in the future.
Yeah.
Roy was a master at getting money.
Yeah.
And he came up with another $35 million, which doesn't sound like that much today for that much construction, but at that time that was a large fortune. And with that $35 million, he was going to build Tomorrowland and have it open with the rest of the park.
Wow.
At that point in time, we were just 17 months out of opening,
17.
and
That's
I
crazy.
didn't have anything
Wow.
for Tomorrowland.
Wow. So what exactly did you do? You drew it, you designed it. What did you do for tomorrow?
Well, they had shows, they had a Circle Vision show already in the can from the
Right.
park in California, and they had a Mission to Mars show also in the can
Right.
from California, and they were going to just put a building around those two shows. And they needed a restaurant, so another big restaurant. In fact, I think this restaurant that I was given to design was going to have 1,100 seats,
Wow.
which is, I'm sure, categorized as a large restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say.
Wow.
Imagine the size of that kitchen. Jeez.
Although there's some, I know there's a couple of restaurants in Michigan that are larger than that. So
Wow.
It-
Michigan.
Okay, that's
Just a
another whole
Yeah,
story.
let's not go there. Let's stay. We're here in Florida right now, so let's do. So okay, so you helped bring Tomorrowland together all the way to opening in
Yeah, so I-
'71.
So I just started, and I had some good leadership, help in helping with the design process. I was a brand new to this environment, so anything I could glean from other folks that had been there before me, I gleaned it.
Yeah.
And but in the 17 months, we opened the restaurant. It's
Wow.
still there, so it must have been somewhat successful.
Yeah.
So Gordon, I remember you telling me the story about the People Mover vehicle design.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
for those who've been at Walt Disney World, it's pretty simple design. It's basically just a little box.
With a roof, unlike
Yeah.
the one. Wait, the one in California. No,
No.
no, no. The one in
No.
California had a roof.
Yeah.
The one in Florida does
Correct.
not because the whole track is covered.
So why is it just a simple little box design,
Yeah.
Gordon?
Well, what the Wedway went through the buildings I was doing. That was planned for the future. They didn't have money for that at the same time the building was being done.
Okay.
So I just had a corridor that wound its way around the various buildings on the site. And, but I didn't know how big the Wedway was going to be or the cars. And you have to understand that the tunnel that these go through, they have to be big enough so that somebody that's in the car can't reach out and touch the walls.
Right.
It could be hurt.
Yeah.
Obviously, Disney does not want that. But I had to, I didn't have a car. So I had to imagine a car, draw one, and use it as a sample, so to speak, of what the car could be like. And so I could measure how far out from the car a person could reach.
Okay.
So I drew this car up. and put it in the drawer, and it just stayed there. Then it just so happened that later they were actually going to build this thing, and somebody saw that drawing in the drawer, I guess, and pulled it out, and they made that car.
I love it. So you were a ride designer and didn't even know it at the time, a ride
You
vehicle
get a raise
designer.
That's
great.
Wow. All right, so Walt Disney World opens. I think we're going to fast forward a year or two, and it sounds like the park's successful, and they're looking for additional things. And you've been assigned something called World Showcase.
Sort of, yes. World Showcase came about kind of almost from somebody's imagination. Walt had envisioned a different use for the property in Florida, and it wasn't working out as studies would show, wasn't working out as much as they thought it would be. So they took a little bit different direction, and one of those directions was World Showcase. Actually, I had left the company. They had found another project that they wanted to investigate, and so I left the company to work with that developer.
Oh, right.
And when I came back, they had started a World Showcase, and so they put me onto that, and it was a strange design, but I added the monorail and some shows on the ground, and entrance
All right,
area.
So I think you told us that they were looking to connect the Contemporary Hotel to the entrance to the Magic Kingdom because there were parking issues, right, with people.
Yeah, that was the precursor to me going off the property and working for this developer, because they thought that they wanted to have a kind of a shopping center, if you will, between the Contemporary Hotel and the entrance to the park. They were very close together.
Malls were kind of starting around.
Out of a mall, and they didn't know anything about a mall, and I didn't know anything about a mall.
Right.
And malls were just being invented in California at that time. They were a worldwide phenomenon, but not here. And so they said, well, we want you to go and get with this developer that's putting them together and work with him and find out all about them, and come back here and design one for us.
Wow.
And that's what I did. I left the company for a year, went with this developer, the Thousand Oaks Mall. The Oaks was being put together at that time, and the developer and I spent every other week going before the city council with our latest version and the various ads that the city council wanted from the previous time, and I would draw them up and present them.
So was this an indoor mall they wanted between the resort and the entrance, or a open air mall?
At Disney.
At Disney.
At that time, it was going to be enclosed, roofed over.
Wow.
There wasn't too many specifics because they just sent me off right away to this other architect's office to find out what it should be. But that
the idea was
it was going to be covered so that people could get from the hotel to the entrance to the park when it was raining.
And the idea was that there were facades representing different countries, or this.
That kind of clicks back into the World Showcase at that time.
Okay, so that's a different thing.
But that whole concept didn't really last very long. We sent some folks out on a road trip to see if we could get some other countries interested, and it didn't work out very well. And so we abandoned that idea. but we wanted to do something like that, so we started another study on the ground, and I was put in charge of that.
And that was for World Showcase in another location on Walt Disney
another
World.
location on the property in Florida with a different approach.
Right.
And that's kind of when Card came onto the scene.
Card Walker.
This is Card Walker, who's
the
CEO.
CEO.
Card Walker, Roy had died, and
right.
Card Walker took the helm of the company.
Okay.
And Card and I worked together on this project, and we kind of worked together for a while. We got to know each other. We went to Disneyland on occasion, much to my chagrin. Card is about 6 feet 6 inches. I'm 5 feet 7 inches.
Wow.
A little different.
His legs come out of his chest. He has the longest legs of anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he walks extremely fast. And or walked, I should say. Card's no longer with us. But we go to Disneyland and walk the park. And incidentally, when Card Walker, the CEO of the entire Disney company, he would walk and pick up trash himself.
Wow.
And he'd see a popcorn bag or something of that nature off to the side. He'd vary his direction, go pick up that bag and take it to a trash can.
Wow.
I watched him do that, I'll bet you 20 times.
But that was typical
Yes.
of those executives at that time. Our last guest, Peggy Ferris, we talked about this very subject, were the guys that came up through the ranks because they were all operators. I think in the case of Card, he was in charge of marketing.
Right.
So, I mean, all these guys had a deep understanding and a really deep passion for the product.
And pride.
Yeah. And understood the bigger concepts. I mean, Walt's concept about, keep it clean all the time. And all of them, they were really good soldiers about following through on that big Walt vision.
Yeah. So Gordon, just in the interest of time, we're going to fast forward to 1975 or so. And it looks like you're sitting on the right side of the famous Walt Disney Imagineering model shop next to the window. Nice job. And John DeCure Jr. is over there working on something that looks very futuristic. So what's going on here?
Yeah, what's happening in the model shop right now?
Yeah, well, at that time, I was working on World Showcase, along with George Terpazzi and Al Dallas, and a couple of others. And we were trying to figure out what to do with all of the various countries. The idea of having individual country sections of land, we had kind of hit onto that, but we hadn't resolved everything. And Card came over, and we were standing around talking about the model and what the problems were. And as he was standing there, he looked over and he saw John DeCure Jr. John DeCure, his dad, was an incredible art director. And he said, what's going on over there? John DeCure was building a concept model of Future World. And when I say concept, I mean very, very concept. You couldn't say that any one of the shapes that he had going was specific to anything real, but it started to you're training your mind and thinking about what the general place could look like.
And Future World was just another idea for something that could exist on the property, another attraction.
That's right. We didn't know where it would end up going. It was just something to kind of keep the idea going.
Okay.
But Card looked over there. It was in the diagonally opposite corner of the model shop. And that's a big place at Disney, the model
Yeah.
shop. We depend greatly on models.
Yeah.
Looked across the room and he says, "What's going on over there?" And he says, "Let's go over there and see what that is." We went over there and talked to John DeCure, and Mac McElravy was working on it with him. And they just chatted with the two of them. And Card says, "Well, take the model, bring it over here, put it on." It was on rollers, actually. And they rolled it across the room and put it over next to World Showcase, where the model that I was working on. He says, "I have to leave," Card said, "I have to leave now, but see what you can do about putting these two together."
Like chocolate
And,
and peanut butter.
So that's the moment where
And-
really the big idea
Wow.
of Epcot that we know today began.
Yeah, that was a historic
To make
second.
a long story short, that's what happened. That was the moment that World Showcase and Future World came together. After a couple of other interim meetings, the actual touching together of those two happened. And it was Card Walker who did that physically.
Wow.
I had made a couple of attempts at getting it closer and closer, but finally Card saw it, the last thing that I had put together, and he stepped in, pushed the tables apart, and pushed the Future World table right up against World Showcase table and said, "Now they're together." And
Wow.
that was the beginning. That was the moment that the whole park started
Wow.
right then.
Wow.
That
Yeah,
was
so
Card
talk-
Walker.
Yeah, so talk now about how, from that point on, I know there was a lot of evolution of design in terms of, where the entrance was going to be,
Yeah.
where the icon was going to be. So
What the icon was going
yeah,
to be. How did they end up with a big sphere?
Well, the sphere hadn't appeared yet.
Okay.
It was a 3/4 sphere based on Buckminster Fuller's semi-sphere that he had 134 of them all around the world, but mostly in Europe. And so that we were using that as the entrance icon. And it was the entrance that at that point in time, because Walt was playing, not Walt, what's his name? Card was playing golf at Walt Disney World with the chairman of
AT&T.
AT&T. And the chairman of AT&T says, "Well, we'd love to sponsor that show, but we'd like to have it at the entrance." Card said that to him that it's now at the entrance. And so that
Why did they put it in Future World instead of at the center? Because the park is sort of a figure 8 on its side. So why not put the entrance there?
that was considered.
Okay.
And actually, John Hench liked that the most. The problem with that is that a person would only get the experience of one side or the other. There was more than a day's visit on one side completely. So our concern was that they would get over to one side and not even realize that the opposite side had all these other activities in them. So that was the argument when there was an argument, such as Disney people argue, but that was being considered. But when AT&T made their choice, and we said, we got it, and it'll be at the entrance, and they wanted it at the entrance to the future. That's a relationship that they wanted to have.
Okay,
Wow.
so tell us how it became a sphere. It sounds like you started with the Buckminster Fuller Dome. So what happened?
I was never comfortable with the dome because so many other places around the world had just the dome.
Okay.
Although it was a unique structural system, but 3/4 just didn't, as replicating the image of the Earth, Spaceship Earth, I was uncomfortable with that. And so I went home on my own little drawing board at home. I came up with the way to complete the sphere, raise the 3/4 sphere up in the air, and then hang the remainder of the sphere underneath. And made a little drawing and gave it to the folks there at the office. And the next thing I know, somebody was assigned to do that version instead of the 3/4 sphere.
And had Marty Sklar asked you to take on the Spaceship Earth model?
Well, that was a little later. I had been identified to be sort of the chief cook and bottle washer of Epcot overall.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So I was serving in that capacity, and being, it was well on its designed way,
Yeah.
and it was still a 3/4 sphere at the entrance. And this other team came in, was working on that project as a complete sphere then. And things got kind of behind schedule. And so to kick things in the rear end a little bit, they said, well, since you came up with the concept of this thing, why don't you take over that project and see if you can finish on time. It had to be finished on time because it was Spaceship Earth.
Right.
It was the entrance.
Right.
That was kind of a good news, bad news. Hey,
Right.
Gordon, we love your design. Good
Right.
news. Now
No,
you
no,
got to
no.
make it work.
So wait, so you're saying it's really a 3/4 sphere and the bottom part that completes it is kind of false?
Correct. There's nothing there. It's just
Mind
air.
blown.
So now that ride system, it was like trying to, fit, 5 pounds of stuff in a 2-pound bag,
Right.
obviously. And the complexity of that ride system too. I mean, just the idea of trying to put a ride
Right,
system
right.
in a sphere
Right.
is crazy.
Well, it worked. It's there.
Well,
Um,
ultimately, but
we had to
you guys
have the
some
load.
issues.
We had the load unload on the ground. These were things that were added after it became identified, after the sphere idea became identified as what we wanted to do.
Okay.
We started making it realistic. And so putting the load unload on the ground and doing some other things that made it a place, like the shop on the camera shop is on the right-hand side to serve people coming into the park that need film or a rental camera or whatever.
Right.
And then the souvenir shop on the outgoing side for people who want to get a last minute thing, remembering their experience at Epcot.
Yeah. So how did you figure out the 3 legs and there's an elevator in there too, right?
Well, the elevator's not my choice. I had an idea for it going up, similar to the elevator in the Eiffel Tower, where it's on an incline. And I would have found a place in one of the legs that's holding the sphere up to take the elevator up that way.
Yeah.
Cog elevator. And but at the last minute, the powers that be, and we've discussed this, that powers that be wanted to have it on the ground and go right up into the sphere right in front. And that's where they got it, that's where they wanted it, and that's where they put it, much to my chagrin. But I got back at him a little bit because I made the front nose of it kind of pointed, and I put high polished mirrors, actually stainless steel, to a mirror finish all around this nose that stuck out, and that reflects everything on the ground. And most people don't even realize that there was an elevator there.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So
Wow.
anyhow, a little smoke and mirrors never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Literally mirrors.
So
Literally.
you told me years ago some story that there was some issue with the ride system, and that you personally positioned yourself during opening operating hours up at the top of the sphere and were helping the vehicles turn for the descent. Is that true?
Yeah, I guess so.
What? How did that happen? It just
Well, the ride system was a little shaky. It's obviously not shaky anymore.
right.
But at the very beginning, there was a little bit of concern about this whole ride system being totally safe. And so I just kind of helped in managing that at the beginning.
Wow.
You know, that is a testament to, again, I started out talking about the big thinking.
Yes.
You know, you think about Epcot, you know, the kinds, the big strokes they were making, and with the ride systems too. And this
Yeah.
was in the day when WED and was building the ride
Right.
system. They
Yep.
didn't go out to contractors.
Right.
I mean, things like the energy pavilion with the whole theater
Oh man.
that went in
Yeah.
that split up and went through the
Yeah,
building,
that
right?
was
Think about
amazing.
that. And then Spaceship Earth with this, you know, incredible, you know,
Spiral track, yeah.
went to the top. I mean, it really, you know, that it was an amazing accomplishment at the time. you
Yeah.
know, And again, a testament to big thinking.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that we don't do that kind of stuff anymore.
Uh,
So, wow, Gordon, that's amazing. And how did they decide on the size of the lake at Epcot? Because, you know, we joke that Epcot stands for every person comes out tired. And because they position the entrance at the far end of Spaceship Earth, it is a long walk just to get to the beginning of World Showcase, let alone walk around it and come back. So why is the lake so big?
It's almost exactly 1 mile all the way around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
wow.
Almost exactly. It depends on where in the walkway around that you measured. If you go to the center of the walkway, it'll be within a few feet of being a mile.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And but that was decided by they asked me to come up with that lagoon. How big can or should it be? And to make that decision, I looked around Southern California and found 5 different bodies of water that were all dissimilar from each other, had different conditions of each one that would allow you to see physically what it would be like to look at that body of water.
Okay.
We started with a place, before I get into that, I put together an excursion, if you will, had the chief cook and bottle washer for Disneyland and a bunch of executives that he asked to go along, and people from the studio and Card and his entourage. And we got some limousines, and I made up a map and of where to go and what to do. And I thought there was one body of water that I thought was about the right size. And it was down almost along the coast. It was a harbor for pleasure craft. And it was almost down to Orange County. And so I arranged this excursion to visit these 5 different bodies of water, get out of the cars, go look at them. I had drawings that showed the relative size they would all be. And we all met at WDI or WED. It was still WED at that time.
Right.
And we started off, and we get to the first one, and I would get out and talk about it. And we'd all get back into the car. People would take some photos. And then we go to the next one and do it. And then finally, the last place down there near Orange County. It might even been in Orange County. I just can't remember. When we got out of the car and looked at it, everybody said, "Oh, this is what we want. This is the right size, the right look." It had some houses around the edge, so we could see a little bit about scale.
Yeah.
What's the name of the guy that was the chief cook and bottle washer for
Dick Nunes, our good friend.
George?
Dick.
Dick Nunes.
Yes.
Dick Nunes was the head of the park in Anaheim,
Right.
and he had his bunch of guys there, and I had a boat hired to take the whole group out on a little excursion on this waterway, and also we were going to have lunch right after this, so I had a restaurant all set up to feed us all lunch. So we had all kind of gotten onto the boat, or most of us were onto the boat now. We were going to take our little excursion. But Dick Nunes started a little campaign among all the guys there to get off the boat. And Card and I were talking about things, and I was showing him the scale of the houses that were around the edge and not paying much attention to what everybody else was doing. And suddenly we realized that everybody else, except Card and myself, had gotten off the boat. And pretty soon the engines started and the boat started pulling out, and everybody was laughing on the edge of the pier, waving to us, "Goodbye, goodbye." And they were expecting the boat to stop. And the captain of the boat said, "Shall I stop now and turn around?" Card said, "Nope, keep going."
Awesome.
And Card and I went out and just sailed around and talked and had a good old time.
Wow.
And all the rest of them were stuck on the shore. They never did get out on the boat.
So it's amazing to think that 50 years ago, this second, Epcot was 1 year and about 2.5 weeks shy of opening.
Wow.
And it will be celebrating its 40
40th.
years ago.
Yeah.
So it'll be celebrating its 40th anniversary next year, October 1st, 2022.
Oh,
Where's my brain? today?
11 months and 21 days
Yeah.
from now.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. So Gordon, we know when Epcot opened, in 1 minute, what were some of the other projects you went on to do over the next decades at Disney? We know Splash Mountain Tokyo, Star Tours, what else?
I was fortunate enough to work with Gordon on Splash Mountain Tokyo.
Oh, nice.
And we can do another whole episode.
Yeah, we'll do another.
Just on that. My first business trip to Japan was with Gordon. And
Did he get you drunk too?
we had an amazing night out with a whole group of Japanese businessmen who befriended us after an evening of drinking. Yeah.
Gordon, do you remember our trip to Ohio where we were driving in pouring rain to see a museum in Ohio outside of Cincinnati? We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame together, and then we were driving to some museum and the sky had just opened up.
Yeah.
You remember that? Not really. Okay.
So somebody is going to write a book about the Imagineering business trips.
Oh, that's a good story.
Although it could get a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah. So So we have
Most
just
of my business trips were out throughout Europe, fortunately.
oh, wow.
We were building Disneyland or Euro Disneyland
Yeah.
in Paris at the time. And I keep going over there and I wouldn't have a whole lot to do, but then there would be questions or ideas that would come to the company in California here, and they would want us to talk to somebody from the company. And so, well, who's available? Well, I was always over there available.
Oh,
And so I would be taken off to go someplace. The people at Legoland, oh, but nice people.
yeah.
They wanted to talk to somebody, and I wanted to go through Legoland and see what they were doing.
Yeah.
And so I was shipped off to Beeland. What country is that in? I never could remember.
Denmark.
What is it again?
Denmark.
Denmark. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Beautiful country, beautiful park,
Yeah.
wonderful people.
Yeah.
And so I went through all that. But
Yeah.
there were a lot of things like that. London was opening up a new city, and so they wanted to talk to somebody from Disney about entertainment elements of the new city. And so guess who went to London? So anyhow, things were enjoyable to do that. I really enjoyed meeting these other people, and they just were so nice to somebody from Disney. I couldn't believe how well I was treated.
So Gordon, you've had a 65 plus year career. You've been all over the world. You've worked on all these great projects. Joe and I are consistently on the lookout for what makes an experience timely yet timeless. So in your words of wisdom, how do we achieve that?
Because you've certainly done it yourself.
Yes. What's the secret?
How do you achieve something like that? Well, first you've got to surround people. You've got to be around people. Surround yourself, if you will, with other people who enjoy doing what you were doing. And it becomes infectious, not just for yourself, but for the clients that you're going to be meeting. These other people sense your excitement, your desire to do something good for them. And that's the first thing that you need to understand. It's all about people being very comfortable with you, and that you are going to do something that they will like, that their customers will like. That's the start of the whole thing.
That's good advice.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and that ties right back to what we were talking about, that whole generation. And of course, Gordon was part of it, who really grew up, with Walt's philosophy of, why you call them guests and not not customers.
Right. Exactly.
I know I remember John Hench and others telling me stories about Walt, and that, Walt genuinely liked people. And so just like Gordon just said, it grew out of this desire of really wanting to do something for people, and they had this enthusiasm like Gordon, for what they did. And man, Gordon, that is a great piece of advice, because I know, like yourself and many of others that, worked at Imagineering, it was never really a job.
No.
It was a passion. You did it because
it's a passion. That's the right word.
Yeah. That's awesome. Becky, do we have a couple minutes? Any questions from the audience?
Actually, almost out of time. I will let Gordon answer one question, which is, out of all the projects you've done, what is your favorite?
Oh, there's no question about it. That Spaceship Earth is my favorite. It was a joy to conceive. It was a joy to work on it. the people that I worked with on it were just the best in the world. It just was a joy every day to get to the office.
Wow.
Love that. So we're going to wrap up today. And Gordon, we can't thank you enough for being here. We hope you guys
Thank
enjoyed the
you.
ride.
Thank you. It was an absolute joy to spend this
It was a
time with
good
you in
ride.
the time machine.
All right, well, we got to head
Okay.
off. We're going to go
Okay.
see if Dave Grohl becomes a better guitarist. Maybe as a drummer,
Nah,
which I
nah,
say
nah,
he
nah,
does.
nah, he's the
He
best
does.
drummer ever.
All right,
No, that's it.
guys.
Okay.
We will see you in the future.
Oh, good. So on behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending an hour of your precious time with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Join us again next month when our passenger will be one of our industry's most accomplished individuals, Rick Rothschild, whose creative vision can be experienced in attractions like the American Adventure, Captain EO, Star Tours, Soarin' Over California, Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage, and so many more. May your tomorrow have the nostalgia of the past, the wonder of the present, and the promise of the future. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Get it.
See you next month.